Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission's regular meeting for June 27th, 2022. This time we'll go to roll call. Commissioner Rasmussen.
Commissioner Britton.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Chair Frazier.
Here.
Commissioner Knable. Here. Commissioner Rasmussen. Here. Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Wright.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll move on to item 3, which is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda.
I have a motion from Commissioner Wright. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Britton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. We at 7 tonight? 7-0. Item number 4 is open forum. This is a chance for anyone who's here in the audience tonight to speak on something that is not on tonight's agenda. So if anyone would like to approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and talk about something that is not on the agenda for tonight, this is your opportunity. So at this time, I'll open the open forum. All right, at this time, I'll close open forum. Item 5 is Chair's explanation of the hearing process. The Planning Commission is a volunteer advisory group to the City Council. One of the Commission's functions is to hold public hearings and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. The purpose of these public hearings is to provide an opportunity for each applicant and citizens to present information, ask questions, and express opinions. Since these proceedings are televised and recorded for the public record, anyone wishing to speak must step up to the podium and give their name and address before addressing the Commission. Staff reports are prepared and provided to the applicant and Planning Commission in advance of the meeting. The first step in the hearing will be for staff to present a summary of the report. The applicant will then have the opportunity to briefly explain the proposal and provide additional information or comments. Anyone wanting to speak in favor or against the proposal will then be heard. Upon completion of the testimony, the hearing will be closed to public comments. The Planning Commission will then discuss and act on the matter. 2 complete agenda packets are available for viewing on the back table. Please do not remove those items. The City Council will act on these items at their meeting on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022, which starts at 7 p.m. And with that, we'll move to item 6. 6.1 is Lighthouse Baptist Church, case CUP 2022-043, with Mike Marosla presenting.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Just as the Chair mentioned, the item in front of you tonight is Lighthouse Baptist Church, amended conditional use permit and house moving authorization. The subject property is located at 9979 8th Street at the intersection of 8th Street and Keats Avenue, just right outside here. A little additional information on the property. It's about 8 acres in size. On the western side of the property is a heavily wooded area. Right woods there. There's an large high wire XL easement on the far western part, also a utility easement for a drainage area in here, and there's a phone service box here as well. In the center of the property is the place of worship and an accessory structure back here and a playground. Otherwise, the area on the east side of the property is an open recreation field, some soccer and some other field activities. A little background, the property is zoned R1 rural residential. In 1988, the conditional use permit was issued or approved for a place of worship. In 2006, an amended conditional use permit and updated site plan approval was approved. With the conditional use permit in the R1 district, you are allowed to have related structures that are located on the same property as the subject place of worship or an integral part of it, such as covenants, parsonage homes, and other religious functions, or related to religious functions. So in 2006, they did receive approval to construct the accessory structure back here. Also at that time though, they did get approval for an updated site plan. The updated site plan did include a parsonage house, showed right here. This is located in the vegetated area on the west side of the property. And also they had some additions to the church and a future gymnasium here, soccer field, baseball field, some other options as well. However, since that plan did not come to fruition, they need to go back through the process. And at this time, the applicant's proposing to relocate an existing dwelling to the subject property to be used as a house for the future pastor. This house that's being relocated, the property is located at 10350 Ideal Avenue. The church purchased it. It's being impacted by the North Point development, so it's an opportunity to reuse this house. There's a significant investment that went into the kitchen on here, and the property owners really wanted to see it reused. So we worked closely with a number of different potential users on finding a good place for this dwelling, and come to find out, the church was selected as the finalist for the dwelling. So the applicant's proposing to locate the house in this general area back here. Per state, city code, the structure needs to be located a minimum of 50 feet from the property line. It's located 66 feet from the property line. As part of the proposal in front of us tonight, they will be constructing a driveway that will service the house with a little turnaround here. And then the house relocated at a later date, probably in later August at this time, mid to late August, as there is a certain time period they need to have it off the property. The Planning Commission and City Council do have to approve all relocations of households within the property, or within the community, excuse me. And also, conditional use permit allows for a parsonage to be located on site, but it cannot have no more than 10 persons residing in it. In this case here, the pastor will be residing in it in the near future. So that should not be, there should be no other persons residing there besides the pastor. Oh, I'm gonna back up here one more slide. As part of this project, the church will be connecting to utilities who are stubbed to the property as part of the 2020 roadway improvements to 80th Street. They are stubbed here, and they will be moved, shown here, and down to the property. The existing church is on well and septic. It will stay on well and septic at this time until future improvements are made to the site. As a condition of approval, all engineering drawings shall be approved by our engineering staff prior to construction and connection to the services. Public hearing notices were mailed out to 70 property owners within 500 feet, and a notice was published in the St. Paul Pioneer Press on May 11th, 2022. As some of you were here, this item was tabled and continued at the last planning commission at the request of the applicant. The applicant wanted time to revise the site plan. Originally, the house was gonna be located over here as shown in the previous, on the previous approved site plan. However, due to tree mitigation and other concerns with setbacks and that drainage way here, the applicant decided to relocate the structure to its proposed location. Due to state statute, we did not have to republish the Pioneer Press notice as the item was tabled or continued. However, we did send an updated notice to the properties within 500 feet on June 15th. Staff did receive one phone call from a resident that expressed concerns about the proposed location of the structure, mainly to do with screening was the primary item here. So as a condition of approval, we did add a condition stating that additional screening shall be placed to shield from lighting, especially as you come down here in the winter. These are a lot of deciduous trees here. So when the leaves fall, there's a pretty open here. So we thought it'd be a nice opportunity. Either you need to add a fence or some kind of landscaping here to assist in screening the view for the resident to the south. So that's a condition, I believe it's 18 in your packet. Also, I'd like to point out too, we are working closely with the applicant on moving the house. There's a number of permits that they need to pull to do that. Luckily for my planning background, I don't get into that too much, but our public works and public safety are involved in that matter when they come to moving the house at a future date. But we'll make sure that all the conditions are met from the planning perspective prior to the relocation. So with that, the recommendation's on the screen, and I'm here for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff?
I have one.
Commissioner Fisher?
I'm seeing, okay, so you said that the church, the existing building is gonna stay on well and septic.
Yep.
I see where the well is noted on this map, but can you, show me where the current septic system is and the drain field and how that's going to, potentially be affected by the new utility lines coming in?
Yep, it's my understanding, get the pen up here. The existing drain field, according to the applicant, is in this general, oops, sorry. want to say they say it's in this general area. There's an existing well here, drain fields over here. I think the original site plan actually shows it better. I don't have it on here. They originally showed on the original site plan that it was in this general location.
Okay.
So it should not be impacted by this proposed. It's not in the wooded area, obviously, as that make impacts, but it's in that general area, from the original site plan approvals.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you. This time, if the applicant is present, if they'd like to add anything, they can step to the podium and state their name and address. You don't have to if you don't want to. Any questions?
I'm not the applicant, I have a concern.
Okay. Okay. All right, we'll get to you then. All right, at this time then, I'll open public hearing on the application. So anyone wishing to speak for or against the application can now step to the podium and state their name and address for the record.
My name is Scott Lichtenberg. I reside at 8038 Keats Avenue, right next to, and my wife Brenda.
Yes.
We've been there for about 29 years. We're not opposed to it, but we do have concerns. And the way that they have designed this, you will drive into their driveway, the lights will come right into the back of our house. And every time they turn into their garage, it'll pan the entire back of the house, 50 feet from. And so, again, that's, and I know they say screening, but if we could have something that's immediate for this winter, so not a pine tree that's 1 foot tall that 30 years is gonna be a screen, or a fence that's 2 feet tall, we need something that's going to block that light, once the tree leaves are gone.
And I also might consider maybe moving it a little bit further, rather than 50 feet, maybe 100 feet from the property line, since there are gonna be headlights coming in that way, maybe that would help out a little bit better. And I'm no engineer, but I looked at the graph there, and it seemed like your septic was way on the other side. Is it on the same side or the different side? Because as you guys might know, when you have a well and septic, it has to be fairly close to the house. Looked like it was a little bit too far, but I'm not an engineer. I'll let you guys deal with that.
So that's our concern.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yep, that's all we got.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this application? All right, at this time, I will close public hearing, and then Mike, I'll have you step back up for a second. And so I just want to clarify, I think the second point first, the house that's being moved is going to be on city sewer and water. So it won't be affected by where the well is or where the septic is that's currently on the property. It's going to be attached to city water and sewer, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
All right. And then as far as the screening goes, I know you had said, and maybe you had a chance to look at, you had said that it was included as a condition. I don't see an 18. I see it goes up to 17.
Oh, okay.
So,
So condition 18, which should be on the online version, which I apologize, it's not. Condition 18 reads, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall provide additional year-round screening between the proposed dwelling and the southerly property line. Planning staff shall approve the proposed screening plan in writing, with the intent of, they have to have this figured out before they can get a certificate of occupancy to occupy the structure. So we want to see this before people are living there. So we like to see it preferably installed by that time as well. And in communications with the church, it sounds like they're very willing to do that. So a couple of ideas, and speaking of the resident, is maybe there's a fence you put in there too, to really work on it. Really screen, arborvitae trees is another one, not the little, or some kind of pine trees, but there's some options we can review with them. But, yeah, it's condition 18, I apologize, that's not in your packet.
okay. Any other questions for staff? All right. This time, any further discussion on the proposal? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to the stipulations in the staff report, also adding that number 18 that we talked about with the additional screening.
Okay. I have a motion for Commissioner Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wright. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. At this time, we'll move on to item 6.2, Dish Network 81st Street Water Tank, case CUP 2022-044, with Riley Rooney presenting.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, Commissioners. My name is Riley Rooney. I am probably new to all of you guys. I am the intern for the summer, so I'm just here for a little bit right now, but this is my first big break, so here we go. All right. So tonight I'm presenting an application for the conditional use, or for a conditional use permit to add wireless equipment to the existing water tower at 8520 81st Street South. So as you can see, here is the location. The site, or the subject site, is on the corner of Insdale Avenue South and 81st Street South. There are 2 water towers currently located. We are focused on the one that is highlighted in blue with the green pin in it. The site is currently enclosed by a chain link fence, and the subject site is currently a 1 million gallon water tank, while the other is a 3 million gallon water tank. So as noted before, we have the 1 million gallon water tank and the 3 million gallon water tank. The 3 million gallon tank currently has 2 users, including Clearwire Wireless and T-Mobile. The 1 million gallon water tank currently has no users on site. If it is approved, of course, Dish Wireless will be on there, but for right now, there is nothing on that specific water tank. There are also 2 equipment buildings that are located right behind, which you can just barely see, right behind the 3 million gallon water tank. And as well, you can see the wireless antennas on top. So here is the proposed equipment. Encircled in red is the ground equipment, which includes the 13 by 11 concrete pad. On top of the concrete pad is a 36 by 36 equipment cabinet, and then that whole structure is going to be enclosed by a 6-foot privacy vinyl fence, so that will be covered for the public, so they're not looking into that every day. And then, as you can see on top, is the 3 wireless antennas that will be on the 1 million gallon water tank. And here is our recommendation, and I'm open for any questions. If I can't answer them, I'll direct you to Emily.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Britton?
So the fence surrounding the equipment that is being mounted on there, is that now part of our policy? Or was that added for a particular reason? I think that it should be there. And we've had some changes in this policy recently, so I'm just curious at whether for any application such as this, we would require a screening fence of this type?
Yeah, so I know for what we have right now, equipment has to be screened. It used to have to be put into a building, but now since the equipment has got, I guess, a little bit more efficient, I don't know all of the technical issues with that. It is only required that it gets put inside of a fence. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Emily. But yeah, it needs to be concealed from the public, so they're not looking directly at that equipment.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you. If the applicant is here tonight, if they'd like to approach and add anything additional?
Good evening. My name's Steve Ward with Ward Development, representing Dish Wireless. Do you need an address?
Yes, please.
15 Park Place, Swansea, Illinois, 62226. I don't really have too much to add. I just did want to say Our equipment is a little different than what you've seen in the past, where they had these big equipment shelters and a lot of radios and air conditioners and different things. You know, those back in the 80s and 90s are usually 12 by 24 or 12 by 28. Our equipment, we're basically a digital service. We do a little bit of voice, but our cabinet's only 30 inches by 30 inches. So that, with our power cabinet, will sit on a 5 by 7 pad. That's enclosed by that 13 by 11, I believe, fenced area.
Okay.
That's really all I had.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have one.
Commissioner Wright.
Hi there. Sorry, I know you're almost off the hook. My bad. So we had a resident reach out with concerns about the, I guess, the wireless network, whatever's going to be installed if this does get approved. Is there any danger to the public whatsoever from
No,
anything that you get installed?
we're licensed by the FCC. We've been issued a very narrow licensed frequency band that we operate within. We're prohibited from operating outside of that, as are all the carriers operate within that narrow band that they own.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. At this time, I'll open the application for public hearing. So if anyone else would like to speak for or against the application, please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we'll close public hearing on that application. I will note, as Commissioner Wright mentioned, there was a letter received by staff prior to the hearing this evening from a resident identified as Mr. James Harmon. That letter is going to be received and added to the file for this application. And each of the commissioners has a copy of that letter. Any additional discussion on the application? All right, I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve, subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report.
I have a motion from Commissioner Britton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Stevens. Any additional discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Item 6.3 is Dunkin / Baskin Robbins, cases CUP 2022-046 and V 2022-047, with Emily Schmitz presenting.
Excellent. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As indicated, the next item before you is an application for a conditional use permit and a variance. The applicant is Lisa McCormick on behalf of the property owner, the CUP specifically for a drive-through and the variance for a setback for a trash enclosure, but we'll get into the details as we move along here. The current site is most of you should be familiar. It's the building just across the street from the Grove 80 apartments, or the old City Hall site. So here's Grove 80. We finally have an updated aerial, so you can kind of orientate yourself there. So the building located at the corner of 80th Street and Hemingway is where we're looking at. It was constructed sometime around in the 1970s, so it's been around a long time. As a lot of you know, it is just a little bit tired, for lack of a better way to put it. There have been multiple tenants in the building over the years, a Curves, a massage, insurance, all sorts of things. But the applicant is proposing to add to the main portion of the building on the north side a Dunkin' Donuts and / Baskin Robbins. This model for them is specifically based around their drive-through. There are minimal seats on the interior of the building, but they are focused on that drive-through traffic. So as you can see on their site plan, they're proposing that drive-through to circle through. I believe there's actually an existing window there that they're going to utilize, but we can talk about the details later. The access will be the existing access off of Hemingway Avenue. There will be no additional accesses to the site as a part of their upgrades to the building, but then there'll be some additional site improvements that we'll talk about. later on. Specifically, I wanted to mention the parking and the stacking. Of course, given the drive-through does require a conditional use permit, our code does require a minimum of 6 stacking spaces. So as staff reviewed, we wanted to make sure that that drive-through flow worked appropriately on the site. We weren't spilling out into Hemingway Avenue, creating any issues that way. So as you can see from their site plan, there is sufficient room, plus some, I could confidently say, for the stacking of 6 vehicles to be supported through that drive-through. In addition, the applicant, as required by the zoning code, a 4-foot-high screening fence on that north side is also going to be installed. The code does allow for either landscaping or a fence. In this particular situation, given the existing site and how close to that property line it already does extend, there just isn't enough room to get that landscape band in there. So the applicant is proposing a fence instead, which will of course be sufficient. And for those of you who are familiar, that parcel to the north is actually vacant currently, but of course there is the hope that someday it would redevelop. So we're planning ahead. So the variance request, as I mentioned, is for the dumpster enclosure on the site. Given the existing site conditions, as they've been for a long time, there's limited space to kind of place that dumpster enclosure without, number one, losing several parking spaces, or number two, shifting it closer to the 80th and Hemingway intersection where we might have some visual impacts as folks are navigating the area, as well as just the visual impact in general, having that dumpster enclosure that close. So staff does support the proposed being right on that northerly property line and not meeting that 10-foot setback that our code does require. Therefore, we did, support that proposed variance request for the location of that enclosure. The applicant, as I had indicated, is proposing some additional improvements to the site. I want to make very clear, these are above and beyond the CUP. This applicant just understands this building and this site needs a little bit of help, a little bit of uplift. So one of the items that they're looking to improve on the site is the monument sign. As you can see, the existing has been around a while, so the applicant is hoping to utilize the existing base and the existing support structures in the sign, but of course replace the materials that wrap the sign. And I think it's important to note this image, the applicant is working now to ensure that there's some brick masonry on that base just to make it stand out just a little bit. In addition to the improvements to the sign, also some exterior facade improvements. Looking to do some painting, creating some better tenant spaces within that building. I think anywhere between 4, 5, or 6 total tenants they're planning for the future in that structure, in the building. Further to the south from the Dunkin location. So replacing windows, replacing doors, really sprucing the place up a bit. So we're excited to see it. So with that, I will leave the recommendation before you. I will note I have added removing condition number 7, as I would say, I guess I'll call it a typo on staff's behalf, as it prohibits two-way communication, which is essentially what a drive-through operation is. So we want to make sure that we're taking that condition out of there as we move forward. Lisa McCormick, the applicant, is available for any questions that you might have, as well as staff.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Wright.
I actually went to that site the other day. I was coming back from work, got this packet. I'm like, all right, cool. I go into that little area where the drive-through is going to be. It's very tight, very tight. I don't know if there's any consideration, but they might want to have some kind of stipulation, no trailers or something, because I'm thinking all those cringy videos you see on YouTube where the dude's like trying to get through with like a big trailer and everything destroys and all that stuff, right? The other thing I've heard on social media too, just perusing around, is there is a bus stop nearby. So in the mornings, that might get a little dicey, I would say, especially if you got people not paying attention. Maybe some consideration of moving the bus stop. I know it's a private property, So there's only so much you can affect, but maybe also working together to make it a little safer in that area. So, because like I can 100%, I like Dunkin' Donuts. They sent me some stuff when I was deployed. I can see more people backing up in that drive-through and kind of going into the street there. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah,
That's all.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think I'll let the applicant respond, maybe, to how they might respond to the traffic in the drive-through. But I will say, from a staff perspective, we did have a lot of discussion, specifically with Public Works and Engineering, to ensure that it would be something that worked. And we're well aware that a truck and a trailer isn't going to make that curve in that drive-through.
I can see that one person trying to make it fit. So.
Right, and hopefully it's a learning experience, but, we can only control as far as we can, but we can certainly work with the applicant if some additional signage is needed in that particular space.
Thank you.
Just to piggyback on that, just because I've been through the drive-through, but the Caribou that we had come through, had that really tight turn where then they had to go back and imagine how that drive-through worked. So I just it sounds like Public Works has looked at this drive-through. They're confident that we're not going to have an issue like that at this location.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we did in fact drive the drive-through as well physically, just to be sure. Actually, I should be clear, our Public Works Director, City Engineer did. He wanted to make sure that it would in fact work in his truck. Now, we can only cover so much, Mr. Chair, but I think we're confident that it should be sufficient.
All right. Any other
Can I
questions?
continue on to that?
Commissioner Frazier.
Since we're talking about traffic, the one big concern I had is just, yes, there's a bus stop there, but also the intersection of Hemingway and 80th, like the left turn out of there is not, it's just kind of a messy, we all know that area is very busy. So I'm wondering if potentially there could be signage when you leave, it's a right turn only and they have to go out and around, to, what is it, 70 or 79th or whatever by the vet clinic, and then go out to Hinton or some, I'm just afraid that, like you said, in the morning with bus stop there, people coming out trying to take a left on Hemingway and then out into 80th, I just feel like it's really congested there. And I'm just wondering if there's any sort of consideration for like the peak times, because at 12 o'clock, maybe it's not going to be a big deal, but at 8 o'clock when there's, 12 elementary kids getting on the bus at that vacant lot stop, it might be, so.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I will tell you, I think there are what they call warrants in the engineer world. I don't know the specifics. If Assistant City Engineer Amanda Meyer has any additional thoughts and she wants to cut me off and add those, I absolutely will accept that. But I believe there are some certain warrants that need to be met before certain signage is installed, but I'll defer, just in case.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So Emily is correct, there are different warrants for signage, lights, those kinds of things. In this case, we could take a look and see if it's maybe just a private sign that's used for different patrons at Dunkin' that maybe, to your recommendation, during the hours of pickup times or drop-off times, that it's a right out only. I don't know that we necessarily want to get to putting in like a pork chop type thing to force traffic to always turn right out of that parking lot, but we can definitely do some more digging and discussions with the applicant about maybe some private signage on the hours.
Sure. Is that actually called a pork chop? Is that the real word for it?
So
I learned something new today.
pork chop is something used
That's like the curb, right? Like the
Yep,
right.
to force like a right
you.
in, right
Yeah.
out type thing, so
Right.
it limits the ability to turn left out of a parking
Right,
lot.
and I'm less worried about always making them turn right, but I just feel like in those peak times. So, yeah, that sounds doable, reasonable.
Okay.
And a pork chop, that's kind of cool.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah,
Commissioner Knable?
I have more of a trash question, I guess. So where the trash enclosure is set up, will that impact any of those parking spaces to the left? I feel like if you're pulling into those two last spots, that's going to be a little tight. And does that impact how many spots they would have? Would they have to take any of those away, and how would the trash be coming in to be grabbed?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, specifically Commissioner Knable. The spaces are appropriate in size. I suppose I'll be honest, I've not made the driving motion myself, but it seems there is sufficient distance between there to turn in. Would it be tight? It seems it very well might be so. I'll certainly let the applicant add some additional thoughts if she'd like as well, when she's up here.
Okay, thank you.
Is that tops, just to ask now, because for clarification, since it's up on the screen here, is that top red X, is that also a parking spot, or is that going to be kind of hashed non-parking?
It's my understanding it is also a parking
Okay.
spot, as it sits today, so they're reutilizing that parking lot that's there.
Okay. Additional questions? Commissioner Stevens?
I'm just curious, the space right next to it that has a little one, what is that? Is that for going in and getting it emptied out, or I guess, and where I'm going with it is, I mean, why do they need the variance? I know it's just a trash enclosure, but it looks like they have some additional parking, right? They've given some more parking. There's that blank space next to it. I mean, did they even look at just like rotating it and getting it out of the setback? And why, is that challenging?
Sure. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Stevens, I will defer to the applicant on that to better describe, their thought process and the site planning process as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you. If the applicant would like to approach and state their name and address for the record, and obviously we've got some questions for you, so.
We don't bite.
Okay, well, good evening, Chair, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And yes, we realize that there's some complexities involved in this site. And I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Emily. She's been fabulous as we've worked through some of these things. Commissioner Knable, I too caught the same thing that you did, and that was a little bit tight. And if you'll notice, can I point on the screen
If you use that pen, Lisa, it should work.
like that?
Nope, use it as a pen. You can write right on there.
Oh, okay. So since we've submitted this, we are removing this. Initially, we were concerned about having sufficient parking, so we added that additional space there. But because of this concern for this distance here, we have since moved this out and we've relocated, we've pushed this dumpster closure this way a few feet, just so that we've got ample space for these cars here to be able to back up and turn out. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was very tight.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yes, and with the, that space didn't add that much, we felt it was more important to keep this flow for people going in and out of that to be as easy as possible. To the other question about pulling the dumpster enclosure out and rotating it, I believe you were thinking to have it accessed from the west, but we have to think about, the ease of the trucks coming in to unload, and so that's why we felt this was the straightest shot, with this orientation. And also we wanted to, so when we removed that other one stall, it allowed us then to move the entrance to the drive-through a little bit to the north, so that we just felt it was just so congested right there at the in and out, we wanted a little bit more room. So that's why we ended up, we looked at other scenarios. We had it like between the in and the out. We looked at a lot of different variations, and ultimately we decided that what we're proposing is really the best option we have. Can you help me? Was there another question?
I think that might have been it.
Okay. Well, then I have.
Someone else can correct me, but go ahead if you have other things to
I
add.
actually have a question. So the comment about the bus stop, I wasn't aware there was a bus stop here. Is this a metro bus stop or is this a school bus stop?
This is a school, from my understanding.
Okay, and can you?
Local school nearby, so.
orient me as to where exactly, is it like at Hemingway and?
It's at
80th?
Hemingway and 79, that's 79th, right, Jared? That goes across, so just north of the vacant lot, that's north of
Okay.
your lot.
Okay.
There's several apartment buildings and things, and there are a lot of kids that come there to get on the buses of all ages, really.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So
'cause
is
there's,
it the concern that they're walking in front of this lot? Is that the concern, or?
I just think the added congestion, to me, was my biggest concern.
Yeah, there's gonna be traffic either way, but, we understand that, but I think
Right.
it's just awareness, I guess, of how much foot traffic you're gonna get around that area, especially when it comes into, the school season opening, coming online, and so, just stuff like that.
Okay.
Things to be aware of, for sure, because I do anticipate, like I said, it's a good business to have here, I personally believe that, but I also think that there's gonna be more, vehicles than what you see on here. They're gonna back into that whole parking lot area there, so that could cause a little bit of issues, I think, with foot traffic, so.
Okay, well, we also have, some concerns about the internal traffic flow. I don't know if you can back this up to the whole. There we go. I think to Emily's point, there's, the traffic will back up into the existing parking lot, but it could cause some congestion with cars, with parked cars backing out. It's going to be, there could be some issues there.
Yeah.
But I understand the concerns. We did talk about potentially adding an access along the north, and then that would bring traffic flow, like they would go in up here, and then, so all this traffic would come down except for the one crossover going into the entrance. But I understand the engineer's point that they didn't want to take a chance on backing up into Hemingway. This will be the operators or the franchisee's 8th location, and all but one of those are a combination Dunkin and Baskin Robbins locations. And we've, just with the real estate market being what it is over the last few years, we've also had to go into some other challenging sites. And I don't believe, at our busiest right now, because of the product type that we have, it's really quick in and out. It's just a minute or two. And so we really don't anticipate having much more than the 6, maybe 7 cars at any given time. You may see an increase, the first month or two.
Yeah.
When it's novel and people are excited, we're going to expect to see some out of the ordinary congestion maybe at the beginning. But as people learn how to navigate the site and as people frequent it more, we really expect to see that calm down. So we really feel like this will be adequate without causing undue concerns or congestion in the site.
Right. The other concern was the, just big vehicles going through that little loop as they go into the drive-through.
Right.
So I don't know if you have more experience with that one than I do.
We did, and we do have, so we had Suburbans go through, and a Suburban can make it, but they do have to go like all the way to that north edge. So there's a trade-off though, because with the fence there, that's without the fence. So they
Yeah.
could maybe nose over a little bit. People may be a little more hesitant or reserved with the fence there. But it's going to be a learning curve. If they go through and have to kind of make some adjust, they'll probably only do it once. And and what we've done at other locations too is we've offered to take product out to them. If they get to the drive-through and then find they just can't make that turn, for that instance, it's like, we'll bring it out to you and, just work through it. And our let's see. Well, right at the entrance to the drive-through lane, we do have a vehicle clearance arm or height detector arm, which limits vehicles to less than 9 feet. So for, larger trucks, maybe a Suburban and those kinds of things could probably go through, but, bigger trucks would not be able to.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Rasmussen?
Yes, on the exterior of the building, are you guys proposing to paint and replace windows on the entire building or just the Dunkin portion, or what is that gonna look like?
Right now, let's see, can we pull up the elevations? And one more add-on to the drive-through. We do have required minimums that we have to meet, which we've got an 18-foot radius, and we were able to meet that. It's just in one area. As you go to the building, it's going to be a little tighter than that, but otherwise, it does meet the radius requirements that Dunkin has. So if you look, probably like midpoint of the building, there's a window there. I think the doors and windows north of that are all going to be replaced. Those south are not at this point in time. Primarily because we don't yet know what kind of tenant mix is going to be coming in there and what their needs or wants are going to be. But we do know that for what we have now, there was a desire for more window frontage. So that's why we're doing that. And it's a mix of painting and around each of the new, well, and even in the existing entryways and windows, we're adding a composite lap siding just to increase, and it's vertical, because we wanted to just, increase the aesthetic of the building and make it seem more elevated. And so that was kind of the intent there, to just make those entrances seem a little bit bigger and brighter and more welcoming.
So all four sides are essentially getting a facelift on this.
Correct. Much of the east elevation, you can see some of that on the southeast corner is. The rest of the building, it's going to be painted, but we're not putting on the composite because much of that site is obscured by vegetation from the, is it CenturyLink building, I believe? They have a small parking lot there, and then the entire, north half of their lot is all vegetation. So a lot of that building wouldn't be able to be visible until you were right there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Britton?
It sounds like, are you going to own the whole building? Or are you going to lease your end of it
Dunkin will have a lease, yes,
for that end of it?
correct.
So somebody else is going to own the rest of the entire building? Are there existing tenants in there that you're aware of?
Yes, there's two other tenants currently. One will be leaving this fall, and another one is just going in.
Okay. Thank you.
And we hope to, once we get our plans finalized, we want to put, work in conjunction with the owner and put forth a marketing effort to try and pull in a more favorable client or tenant mix.
Commissioner Knable?
I'm kind of curious about the deliveries.
I'm sorry?
Deliveries of the,
Okay.
I'm assuming you're going to have product, dry goods, all that pieces. Do you know does that come on a semi-truck? Does that come on a delivery truck? How are you getting product into your store with
Sure.
kind of how tight this is here? I know, just use McDonald's as instance, that semi-truck pulls up, blocks up a good portion of the first drive-through lane, spends a good portion of the early morning unloading it and that kind of stuff. So if they're unloading directly in front of your building, they're blocking both your handicap sites, your patio, and entrance to your drive-through, depending on what kind of truck you're getting. So do you
Well,
guys?
and we receive deliveries, I believe, twice a week, and it's not a semi-truck. I don't know the type of truck, but it's a big box truck.
Yeah.
And what we were thinking is that they would enter the site and then pull in by that northwest corner and then back up towards the back, and they usually come overnight. Because some of our stores open at 6 a.m., so they have to be in and out before 5 o'clock. So it's generally overnight that this occurs, so we don't foresee that as an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Any additional questions? I'll have the last one then. I'm going to ask about the fence.
Okay.
And then maybe you can just show me on the overhead, where exactly, is the fence going to run all the way from the northeast corner?
Help me.
And then how far?
Okay.
This is a good one.
All right. So what we're proposing right now, and remember that the dumpster enclosure is moving to the east somewhat. So the fence would go from the dumpster enclosure to that north corner. And then all along here is all vegetation. So we feel like that's adequate screening.
Okay.
So we just thought we'd take it to that corner.
All right, so the dumpster enclosure won't be covered by the fence, but it'll be the starting point of the fence?
Correct.
All right. All right, thank you.
If you'd like, I can reserve any potential time. I'm happy to come back up if there's any other questions after comment.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. At this time, we'll open public comment on the application. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against the application may step to the podium and state their name and address. At this time, we'll close public comment at the application. Any additional comments from the commission? Commissioner Rasmussen.
I know the way the drive-through kind of lays in there is a little bit unusual and tight. Although it seems like it's really the only way it's going to work at this property. I do know of two other fast food type places in the Twin Cities who had similar drive-throughs, and it was challenging in a truck, but we've learned pretty quickly how to navigate it, and I would assume that folks around here would do the same, and don't have a lot of concern about it. Sounds like they've thought it through pretty thoroughly.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments? This time I'd look for a motion then.
I'll move to approve based on the findings of fact and subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report.
And would you agree to remove condition number 7?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion from Commissioner Britton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Fisher. Any additional discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to item 7, which is approval of the Planning Commission minutes of May 23rd, 2022. Unless there are any additions or corrections, I would look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve, Commissioner Knable. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wright. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. 8 is reports. 8.1 is recap of June city council meetings with Emily Schmitz.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, usually Director Costello does this, but I'll fill in this evening. And it was actually quite light in June. So at the June 1st meeting, the only highlight that I had was the Historic Preservationist of the Year. Mr. Mike Morosla presented the Acacia Lodge for their work in restoring in Old Cottage Grove. I believe it's a church, not if I'm not making that up right. It was a church and now it is their lodge. So they did a lot of work there to preserve that particular structure. And then through the June 1st and the June 15th, the only other note that I would make is we did approve the bid award for the South District storm sewer project as well as the street utility projects that are happening, will be starting to happen south of 100th Street as you see more activity down that way. Probably won't start till this fall. Completion maybe next spring. Those dates aren't solidified currently, but thought it was worth mentioning as a part of those approvals.
All right, thank you. 8.2 is response to Planning Commission inquiries. We didn't have any from last month, other than the notes I would note that were in the minutes about the discussion of Military Trail, which I know was forwarded on. 8.3 would be Planning Commission requests for this month. Commissioner Britton.
I know it's a county road, but the work that they just did on County Road 19 in front of the junior high, they added a guardrail on one side of the road. Can you add any insight on why one side of the road got a guardrail and the other didn't when they're just as steep? Just curious. And again, I know it's not a city project, but
19 they did? I guess I'm over there.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that is a great question. I'll be honest, I do not know their design or the specific reason behind only one side, but I'd be happy to look into it for you and provide a response.
if you could, that'd be great.
Yep,
Don't put
absolutely.
too much work into it, but if you just
No
throw
problem.
something, I'm sure it's a simple answer, but I'm like, we've never had one, and now we've got one, why not two? But
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other requests for staff? All right, at this time, I'll move on to item 9, which is an adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn from Commissioner Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wright. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned.